And now we're gonna do something everybody like to do. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna from Jurassic 5.
This is Mark Ray.
This is Craig Charles.
And you are now tuned into Joints and Jams
With Shaka Loves You.
with Shaka Loves You.
With Shaka Loves You on Soho Radio. Listen on the slide.
You gotta have tiny legs.
Nah, longer fingers, I think. Yeah.
I can ruin any party, mate.
Just say no.
And good luck on y'all show, man, for real.
So we are stoked to be joined on the phone all the way from San Diego by the legendary DJ and producer, DJ Z-Trip. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing good, man. It's 9 p.m. UK time. What are you, 1 o'clock in the afternoon for you?
Yeah. I just woke up, so it's 1 o'clock over here, which is about right. Because I've been staying up till like 4, 5, 6 in the morning, sometimes 8 in the morning.
Working or?
Yeah, not by choice. It's really just because there's so much to do right now. So it's nighttime for me is when the phone stops ringing and the emails stop coming in heavy.
Yeah.
So I can do the deep dives in the studio and like get lost on like, finding that one acapella to fit with that thing for 3 hours, like, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. So when we kind of doing some research for this chat, we actually kind of found out that we got quite a few friends in common with you. We're on the same agency as A Skills and Crafty Cuts.
Oh, okay.
Who I know you know pretty well. You've done some stuff with Adam and did you do Red Bull 3Style with Crafty? Or
we did. Well, I did the one of the Red Bull 3Styles with Crafty in Azerbaijan. Yeah. And Crafty, Adam, those guys are the homies. Shout out to those dudes. Love
man.
those guys. But like I see them, whether it's like Shambhala, whether it's like we just we're on the same circuit in a weird way, but it's fun. Yeah. Like people like them or the Next Men or any of these guys who are like the equivalent of sort of the squad of what we do in the States. We had like the UK counterparts, right? It's like, so we see them from time to time. Brad from the Next Men, he comes when he's in LA, he comes down to San Diego. We work on tracks, and so
they're good guys, man. The Next Men
connection to the homies out there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like during lockdown, we've like got. Obviously, we're actually on Next Men are on the same agency as us, but we kind of like we were big fans, but we never had like a lot of contact, I guess. But like lockdown, we've got so much closer, and we've been like they've kind of been checking out our stuff more, and it's been cool to like get the support.
Yeah, everybody's just been like sitting in everyone else's streams, just like supporting and like getting into it. It's been amazing, man.
I love that. It's it's funny. The one thing that I will say through this whole chaos is that it's reinforced or strengthened or established new networks, new connections.
Yeah, 100%.
And also in a weird way, I feel like it's also dismantled certain networks or certain connections that needed to be that. You know what I mean? I don't know about you guys, but I've muted a lot of people that I just don't need to hear from anymore in my life.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean that.
Yeah, totally.
I mean that in just like, there's certain people who maybe we connected years down the line, whatever, and I just have continually just been following them. But then like when all this shit hit, or even more so now, I think with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, it's like when you see some people who do some really sort of like outlandish, bizarre tweet or something, and you're like, I don't know if I really fuck with that. You know what I mean? And after keeping an eye on that person for like a minute, I don't really know if I fuck with them like that anymore. And so you kind of dead some of those connections, just on some like, I don't really need to hear from that person. What I do need to do is connect with these people over here because I really fuck with them more. So it's like that whole.
Yeah, man.
I've started to reinforce and reconnect and reestablish the good connections and the good networking that I have, and I feel like I see that also happening. Like people are turning up the volume on those interactions because that's all we kind of have right now. We're not seeing each other in the streets, right? So it's like.
For sure. Yeah. You touched on it real briefly there. Obviously, like I want to get into talking about you and kind of what you've done as well, but it's kind of like it's like the elephant in the room at the moment. We kind of got to talk about it a little bit if you're cool with that. And obviously, you're right, kind of, you're in the US, so you're obviously a lot closer to a lot of the the stuff that's happening in the world at the moment. So I'm keen to just kind of get your thoughts on it and your kind of
I have to start out by saying, obviously, not being a Black person, I can only give you my perspective, and that's, so you take it for what it is. But being being surrounded by and you know, by Black culture my whole life, being heavily influenced by it, I think it goes without saying, but I'll just say it anyway. I have always stood with Black lives. Black Lives Matter, Black culture matters heavily. It's a cornerstone of you know, musically and culturally a huge part of who I am. So so naturally, to see this shit that's been going on, not just now but forever, has been hard to stomach. And I think though what's happening now is, again, the fact that it's kind of like the perfect storm, right? Because everyone's home or has been sort of locked down. I think there's a couple things that are happening. One, it forces everybody to deal with their own shit. So like you're forced to look in the mirror. You have no distractions but to deal with your own shit. So once I think people started to get into that headspace, other things started to pop up that needed, like, oh, that plant needs watering. Oh, this needs to be addressed. Oh shit, I gotta clean up my side of the street a little bit. You know what I mean? Whatever. Start doing that maintenance on your own. So that conscious shift was sort of already happening because the distractions were pulled away. That coupled with, you know, George Floyd's death and the video of that, and then everyone being able to share, like I said, these networks are now reinforced because that's the only really communication we have. So that turned into the super highway of passing information, you know, so people naturally are outraged. And then I feel like you take it even a step further. Once people started to mobilize and people started to protest, then you start to see the reverberations of police brutality magnified because, you know, people are capturing all these moments of cops using excessive force on people. And so it just, this feedback loop. Now, all of a sudden, it's like everybody, the world is marching, people, like everyone's paying attention. So the only thing I could say about this that I feel like, again, just from my perspective, is I feel like we're at a tipping point where I think most people are now super keen to what's going on. And I'm hoping that because of that, there'll be some change, because it's not just one clip or whatever. It's accumulation of all that stuff coupled with what's happening and the reaction that the police are having to people protesting about it. And this clash that's happening, it's really, you know, it's divided a lot of people, but I feel like there's way more of us than there are of them. At least that now I think is something that will make some kind of change. I hope so anyway, man, because it's fucked. The whole situation is fucked and needs to be completely fixed. And yeah, so clearly, man, I stand with all the people of color who've been harassed by the fucking police for years and years and years. It's like, it's just, that shit has got to stop. So, and I apologize for anybody who has to look over here and be like, are those guys still on that shit? Because there's not a lot of us who, you know, there's a lot of us who don't feel that way, but there are a small amount of people who still are clinging on to this dumb shit. And like, it's, you know, that's what needs to be addressed.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure. And you touched on it there, man. It's not just in the US. It's become this global thing. You know, it's like the pandemic is not just in one country. It's fully global. And you know, this weekend there was massive protests in the UK, big cities in the UK. Glasgow had one yesterday.
It's crazy. I mean, when people in New Zealand are marching, it's like, yo, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like it's that we're at a tipping point where things now, you can't unsee the shit you've seen.
Yeah, totally, man.
And also I feel like the people who weren't paying attention are finally paying attention. And the people who needed to see this shit are seeing this shit, you know? So it's like anyone who was on the fence or like, you know, had whatever their bullshit excuse was for like not acting up or not being outraged, now you have no choice but to be outraged. So I think that is the first thing that leads to real change, like really dismantling qualified immunity and all these things that are like pieces of the puzzle that no one really knows about until it's exposed. Now all of a sudden you're like, you know, anybody should watch The Last John Oliver. You know, he did a whole segment on police and it was incredible. And it's like, that's the kind of thing. It's like the consciousness I think is starting to shift and people are starting to be aware. That's how change happens. Hopefully, fuck. Anyway. Let's talk about some music.
I know, right? Totally.
I'm sorry to get so heavy, man. But it's real. This is what's going on.
It's good, man. People need to talk about it. People do need to discuss it, man. And like I think like I watched a video post that you did, I think a few days ago, and you were going to do like a set, and you were like I don't know if I should do this set because I don't want to be like a distraction, and you made a really good point, and that you're saying that, like, you know, people need to be able to take that sort of minute away from what's going on in the world, and you are in a unique position to be able to provide that minute for them, you know. And it's like, it's good, man. It needs to be sort of thought about and talked about, you know.
Well, I feel like, you know, the two worlds definitely bleed into each other a lot, and should and could and should. I mean, you know, I definitely, you know, I was definitely sort of grappling with it, and I still sort of like, I don't want to. It's tough when I'm like, here's my next flyer from my next Thursday.
Yeah, man,
like,
totally.
A little bit, but because I don't want it to be received wrong. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I think about the entertainment that I was receiving as a kid when I was getting exposed to, you know, Malcolm X or Farrakhan or whoever, sonically through music. I was being exposed to some of these people that I didn't know who they were as a young white kid coming up. It's like I was listening to Public Enemy on the dance floor, hearing these lyrics, or listening to KRS-One and hearing these lyrics. And so I was sort of having this conscious party where I was consciously absorbing what I was, you know, and going like, oh, okay, who is Farrakhan? I gotta remember that name, and I gotta look into that when I get back home, and whatever. Like right now I'm dancing, but like these names are sticking in my head. So it's like the concept of being able to be at a party and have a couple beers and dance with a girl and, like, you know, be in that headspace, but also being educated a little bit in the same context was like the good balance of yin and yang, you know what I mean? So to me, I feel like to be able to give a distraction is great, but also when you sprinkle in some sort of spoken word stuff, or you sprinkle in some enlightenment, it helps to go like, yeah, we're all here, we're taking a break from the front line, but like, let's not forget the focus. And then, you know, when we're done partying and whatever, like when we get up the next morning, let's get back to the front line, a little recharged, a little refreshed. Like, so I think it's needed. You need a break, you know, but not like a complete distraction, but just a break from the, you know, if you're getting hit in the face every fucking minute, bang, 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 it's like you need that minute to sort of stop and be like, hold on a second.
Especially because, like, I was watching a bit of Chris D'Elia's podcast that I think just a couple of days ago, and he was like, do you remember coronavirus? You know, it's like,
exactly, right? That was so like fucking, you know, what, a month ago.
Yeah, it's just like it's mental. But it's funny because we did a stream yesterday. We've been doing these Sunday kind of brunch streams, which have been going really well. But we there was literally a protest on in Glasgow where we're based, at the same time as we did the stream. So we were like, okay, what do we do? Do we not do it and, you know, show kind of like support for that? And then we were like, well, why don't we try and, like, because there was people, like, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people maybe couldn't go down to protest, you know, they didn't want to, couldn't physically go down, whatever it is. So we were like, well, rather than cancel it altogether, we'll try and do something that, you know, show solidarity and support. So we themed all the music, you know, along the lines of, you know, of Black Lives Matter, which is kind of the music we play anyway, but we just like we dug a lot deeper into like a lot of the meanings behind the songs and the lyrics in the songs, and it was, you know, from a DJ it was a real good experience just to, you know, think a lot more about that. But also the reaction that we got from people was so positive, and they were like, yeah, this has been amazing, like, thanks so much for putting this together. And like it is that distraction thing, but it also is that kind of like, I don't want to say education, I don't want to get like preachy on it, but do you know what I mean? It's I think it is important.
I think it's needed, especially, you know, to dig in the crates and pull out some of these records that are still relevant or still convey a message or offer up a different sense of support, you know what I mean? Also too, if it's, you know, fucking crying, getting that emotion out of you, you know what I mean? Because that emotion, if built up, will turn into rage, you know what I mean? So it's like to be able to untie those knots, you know what I mean? If a certain song hits you and it's just like makes you break down in tears, because it's like, think about it, man, we're humans, we're not really meant to be hit with this heavy amount of non-stop visual and audio, and like it's just traumatizing, man. So it's like coupled with the fact that like we're also meant to be interacting with people and giving people hugs and handshakes, fucking community.
There's none of that.
No.
There's being around the drum circle, you know what I mean? Like we have like, as a human species, we are meant to interact. So you've got people being home, cooped up, needing that interaction coupled with being hammered with these fucking shitty images of like the therapy in music. For me, even, you know, digging in and like doing my chill set or doing, you know, a house set or whatever, just trying to find these things where it's like, at least it taps into some emotions that are like, let me get these out. Whether I'm, you know, welting up in tears or whether I'm just like exhaling, you know what I mean? A good fucking exhale from the right song will take a huge weight off of our shoulders because it's a lot to bear, man. So, you know, I think the therapy of like finding these songs and digging in, you know, I watched Jazzy Jeff's thing, you know, the other day, and I was like, man, it's heavy. It's like,
yeah, it was, man. I saw that. Yeah.
They need to be, you know, it's, you know, music is a complete reflection of what the fuck is going on in the times if done correctly. I mean, if you're just singing about a pop tune about like standing on couches, popping bottles or whatever, like, sure, there's a time and a place for that. But right now, like, dig into the crates and listen to some Last Poets or some shit. You're like, whoa, this is still relevant. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
I think it's dope that you did that. And I think more and more people should do that. And I'll even take it a step further. Even pre George Floyd and the magnification of what the fuck's been going on, even pre that, I've been struggling with just watching DJ sets where, you know, especially under the circumstances of being home and being in a quarantine or being in lockdown, like, you have these DJs who I know are really dope, and I want to see them flourish. I want to see them expand, but some of them I've tuned into, and for them, they just haven't gotten over the hurdle of realizing you don't have to play the club set. You don't have to play the stock tunes that are in that playlist that you've been playing, you know, on sort of in a repeat sort of manner over the course of however many months that you have been doing your residency at the bar or whatever, or your radio show or whatever. People are programmed to be like, that's what was working, so I'll keep doing that. This quarantine has turned everything upside down, and I feel like a turn-up set, while it's great, is like everyone's sitting on their couches at home. It's like Netflix and chill, like you're chilling.
Yeah, totally.
So this turn-up thing is like, okay, cool, but you could go somewhere else with it now because it's a completely different sort of crowd, if you will. It's a completely different environment. So I'm really hoping to see, and some people have completely risen to the occasion, but others have just kind of stayed in the same gear. And while that's okay for them, for me, I feel like this is the perfect opportunity because who knows when we're ever going to be doing shows again, right? So this is a perfect opportunity to show your depth as a DJ or your depth of knowledge musically, or to do that. Hey, you know what? I always wanted to do a fucking, you know, a reggae thing, or I always want to do whatever. It's like, now's your chance to like give something different and expose them to new things and give you that, you know. It's also a situation where if you're in a club, you kind of got to keep people dancing, right? But if you're at your house and you're like, you have this moment in your set where it's like, there's no drums for like 3 minutes, you know, but it's this really cool thing. People will totally rock with that because there's no need to keep the fucking beat going. There's no need. It's a completely different scenario. So I feel like that's something that I've been wanting to see more and more DJs that are streaming get into that headspace of like, I don't have to do the thing that I think I have to do. You know what I mean? Because we don't in this environment.
That's been the
it's the same set with that 3 minute long wash of like chill stuff would totally not work in a club. It would be, people would be like, what the fuck is going on, dude? I came here to like get down, and what are you playing this Nina Simone acapella movement thing with strings behind it for 3 minutes? Like it wouldn't work. So it's like, now's the time to play all that shit. You know what I mean? Like expose people to it.
Yeah. That's been for me, that's been the most fun part of doing these live streams, is getting to, you know, not have to play a set where people are needing to dance. You know, you can dig deep. You can
it's the best.
Yeah, and like you're doing specific. You know, you're doing your house set, you're doing your drum bass stuff, you're doing the chill stuff. It's like, and
it's got more freedom to kind of do with what you want to do with it. You know.
I hope when this is done, that we can take some of that diversity sonically into the environments that we go into, and people will receive it a little bit more, because I feel like they're going to be a little more conditioned to understand, like, oh, this person's way deeper. The crates are deeper than just the bangers. You know what I mean? Like, and that's, I'm hoping that this is, you know, in a weird way, to me, it's also been a great leveler. It made everybody sort of start and hit reset on a lot of things. You know what I mean? let's take streaming, for example. Like, every DJ had to learn how to be a fucking video broadcaster, like, overnight.
I know.
A video gamer.
We all had to learn OBS. We all had to learn, oh, this HDMI cable, that's a micro, not a mini. Oh, this is fucking, you know, like, whatever this shit, like, and by the way, anyone who's listening to this has no clue what I'm saying. I might as well be speaking Japanese, but like,
yeah, for sure.
For the DJ community, we're all like, oh yeah, no, I totally know what you mean, man, because we all had to figure out, what frame rate, frames per second.
Yeah.
So but like, do all the gamers now hate the DJs because we're probably going to ruin Twitch for them, right?
Fuck their whole world up. I will apologize 1,000% that the DJ community totally came in and fucked up whatever you guys had going. I fucking apologize on behalf of all of us. Like, we just we're looking for a life preserver, man, and like that became it. You know what I mean? And it's just crazy because we've all had to. You know, it's the great leveler on so many levels. It really is that. It's the complete fresh start, because to me, it's like how it was when Serato hit and we all jumped from vinyl to digital. It was like all of a sudden this thing hit. There's, you know, you're going along and all of a sudden a huge canyon just appears, and it's like the buffalo. Like, do you stop or do you fall into the canyon, or do you jump over the canyon? Some of us have made the jump, you know, from vinyl to Serato, and then here's another one. Are you streaming it? Are people hearing you? Are you broadcasting? Are you getting your shit out there? Well, it's the same thing. Like, if you don't know it, you got to figure out how to jump over, because this is the new norm, right? So it's this crazy time, man, where, you know, but I also feel like because it's that, it's opened up it's disrupted the norm enough where, you know, I can actually hear people do more diverse stuff. And again, there are people who are doing it, you know, so it's awesome. I love seeing that. But there are still a couple people who are like, you know, handcuffed to that old mentality, and they don't need to be. You know what I mean? It's a mental block. It's because you have to really sort of like go, wait a second, you know, up is down, down is up. Everything's changed. Now I can, you know, and once you realize that and you take a step into that world and you see some of the reactions, if done correctly, it frees you from this mentality that I think, you know, a lot of DJs have clung on to, which is like, the last thing I want to do is disrupt the thing that I've built. But disruption is what is the norm now, right?
Man.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I could literally talk about live streaming for days, but I think our listeners would probably tune out pretty quick.
Yeah. Sorry to get all fucking nerdy on
No.
But all the DJs are like, say some more. Tell me, like, what do you stream at? What's your bit rate?
Yeah.
Nerdy. It's the nerdiest shit.
So, that's for the director's cut. We'll put that on YouTube.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's
made it this far in the interview. You fucking awesome, man. You rock.
So yeah, I'm conscious of time, and there's still a ton of stuff we want to kind of get stuck into.
Yeah, let's get it on. Let's do the speed round.
Yeah.
Speed round.
So you grew up in Queens, right?
Yeah, Queens, New York.
And then moved to Arizona?
Yeah, moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
What kind of age were you when you moved?
Well, so I grew up in Queens, lived there till I was like 7, then moved to Arizona with my family. My parents got a divorce. My dad moved back to New York. So then I was back and forth between New York and Arizona in my early teens, like 12, 13, 14, whatever. So I was getting exposed to hip hop in New York, buying up the records I was hearing on WBLS at Kiss FM, Marley Marl and Red Alert, playing these records. And I would hear them. I would take the cassette that I recorded. I'd go into like, you know, Rock and Soul or Downstairs Records or whatever, and be like, hey, what is this song? And they'd be like, oh, that's EPMD. And they'd hand me the 12-inch. And they'd be like, you need 2 of these. I was like, what? And they'd trust me. I was like, okay. So I would, you know, I was hearing this stuff, and I was bringing it all back to Arizona. And in that process, was exposing these people who, at the time, that, you know, clearly there was no internet. The only way things were passed around was videotape or cassette. You know what I mean? Like, that was the mixtapes were the thing. So I would play these regional hip hop records from New York for these people in Arizona, and they were like, what the fuck is this? So I became this outlet for a lot of people there. So that's sort of how like my roots of music started, kind of 1 foot in New York, 1 foot in Arizona. And then around 2000, I moved to LA and signed a record deal, and, you know, put out Uneasy Listening with DJP, and that
that's right.
everything open for the mashup thing. And then signed the deal, put out Shifting Gears, and one thing after another. Played Coachella, played Lollapalooza, opened for Linkin Park, did like all this. The career just blew up. And
you opened for Rolling Stones as well, did you? Was it Rolling Stones?
Yeah. Well, it was that was for, oddly enough, for SARS stock. So SARS, when that hit, they had a thing called SARS stock, and it was in Toronto, and it was AC/DC, Rush, Rolling Stones, the Guess Who, Justin Timberlake. I want to say a couple other people. I can't remember off the top, but they put me out there. This is all on vinyl, no Serato. They rolled me out there and sort of like, here you go, 450,000 people, 450,000 people. And I had to play a DJ set, and it was like, and by the way, this is right at the time when Justin Timberlake kind of broken away and started to do his own thing, his solo stuff. He came out on piano, played piano solo, singing, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. But the crowd was so not having it. They were throwing bagels and shit at him.
Really?
It was just brutal to watch, because I was like, yo, this dude actually got, he can sing, and I see what he's doing, and he's is trying to establish himself as a little bit more than the teen kid pop star or whatever. And that crowd was not having it. And so I was paranoid as fuck, because I was like, I go on next, and like,
that's what they're doing to him.
They're gonna hate me. They're gonna hate me. They're gonna hate me. But I started with my Mercedes Benz, my Janis Joplin thing, into the DJ Shadow break, and then I think I did like a Steve Miller thing and like something else, and like all of a sudden that crowd was like, oh, he's one of us. And then I started sort of taking them on the journey, but I had to win them over with like, no, I grew up with this music. I love rock music too, and I'm not up here playing like hits. I'm like, let me weave this together, play a Who thing, and like. But then I like go from the Who into like a drum and bass thing, and like by the fourth song they were like, yeah, we fuck with this guy. Like there was no, you know what I mean? Like I won them over. I was literally selecting on the spot, like what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Pulling records, and it was incredible. That was huge. But
Justin Timberlake's like, tell me your secret, man.
Yeah. Start with Janis Joplin. Start with.
So you mentioned obviously playing a bunch of different music and styles, which I guess you've always been kind of associated with. Was there one genre that kind of stuck out for you that kind of started the kind of journey, if you like, or was like, the kind of first love?
Well, I think, to me, it was really rock music. More specifically, I feel like it was Led Zeppelin. So as a kid, I played drums.
Yeah.
And so I was always listening to music that had big drum beats in it, right? Whether it was funk, whether it was disco, whether it was rock, but like the one really drum heavy, sound that I would gravitate to was Zeppelin, because John Bonham was such a powerhouse of a drummer. So I was listening to Zeppelin more for the beats than I was for the everything else. But because I would hear certain songs, I would be like, oh, that's this might sort of has the same feeling and vibe as that. And so I started to like put these pieces together based around drums. And I think, and it was kind of crazy, because once I heard Rhymin' and Stealin' by the Beasties, I was like, oh, somebody else gets it, right? And it was Rick Rubin doing this thing of like fusing these two worlds together, you know what I mean? And that was it for me. I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But like any big songs with big wide open drums were things I was gravitating towards. And then I sort of understood the sense of like, you can put big drums under anything if they're in the same tempo and there's the same feel. And then I understood the concept of extending the break and those kinds of things. So but I think it all fused from big heavy rock drums. You know what I mean? Neil Peart, Tom Sawyer, shit like that. Like those were, as a kid, like those were. I had an older brother who was into that music, and he had exposed me to Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd and all these rock bands before I'd heard any. I think the first hip hop stuff I'd ever really heard that I identified with was like Curtis Blow, AJ Scratch, probably Nucleus Jam On It was another big one where I was like, what is this? You know what I mean? But like hearing these, also things that had big drums, like Art of Noise, beatbox, like that was like this song was like built around kicks and snares, and I was like wide open sound. So all these things, Genius of Love, Tom Tom Club, like all these songs that were sort of like these weird hybrid funk things, early Parliament records, like they all accumulated, and I gravitated towards the wide open drum spots. And I didn't necessarily know that that's what hip hop DJs were doing in New York by extending the breaks. Like, I just gravitated towards that because it spoke to me.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Eventually both of those worlds, the hip hop world and the rock world and sort of funk world, all sort of accumulated in a point where I was like, oh, I understand the main base of what this soup is, right? And so that was drums for me.
Because you kind of do sets with drummers, don't you? A lot.
Oh yeah, I try to. I mean, it's funny. Like I've always been, as a drummer, I've always, I used to play records and play along with them, right? So it's like as a kid, like that's how you'd learn different styles or different tempos or whatever. So, and then early on we had this crew called Bomb Shelter DJs. It was me, this guy DJ Radar, and another guy DJ Emil, and we had a night where we'd set up 6 turntables every like Wednesday, and it started with like 20 people, then turned into like 100 people, then it was like 250 people, and we were packing this place out. But we were just playing and mixing all different kinds of styles of music. It was kind of like open tables, open format, but like in the sense of like whatever the fuck we want to play wherever the party went. And then we would set up a drum kit, and it was like, and also Radar was a drummer too, and so like we would all play drums over top of shit. So it just felt like a natural fuse of what was going on, and it's interesting because you look at like people have been kind of doing this for the longest time. Stetsasonic, they had live drums when they would play. There's always Junkyard Band or whatever. There's always percussion that was trying to fuse. So I was like, anytime I would play, I would always have a drum kit or as much as I could. And then I went on tour, the Shifting Gears tour, and I brought a drummer with me. And then I also brought another drum kit. So I had 2 drums set up. Wow. And we'd have a moment where I'd break away and we'd have this double drumming thing that was like funky as shit, you know what I mean? And like that was something that I miss that. Anytime I can have a drummer. I did a thing with Questlove. There's probably a clip floating around.
Yeah, so that's where I saw the video actually.
That was so fun, man. It was a thing where we did a thing for like BlackBerry or some private thing, but I was spinning and they brought his drum kit out, and then we were playing together, and then I jumped off the tables, came over, and he kept the hi-hat rolling, or well, we double drummed together, me over top playing the toms or whatever, and then he kept the hi-hat going, and then I grabbed the stick and picked up where he left off on the hi-hat. Then he went over to the turntables and I played drums, and he
amazing.
And it was this whole like drumming and that whole thing to me has been something I've been doing for years. Long before any of the other cats started messing with it. Travis and AM and any like this drums have always been a part of what I've done because I've been a drummer since I was a kid. So, but it's dope to see other people take that and flush it out and play with it, because I feel like that's an element that can, if done correctly, can completely enhance or blow people's minds, because it's such a fun, that's what hip hop is anyways, beats. We're fucking adding drums to acapellas and everything else anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We're getting super close to 40 minutes. Are you cool if we restart this call just for another 5-10 minutes?
Man.
Amazing, man. Right, it should just be cool on the same link.
I'll just restart Zoom.
I mean, did anyone know what Zoom fucking was before all this started?
Zoom is the winner of this whole fucking of the first quarters of 2020.
Yeah. Whoever owns shares in Zoom, man.
Yeah, they're like they're fucking like keep coughing, motherfuckers. Yeah, they're happy about this shit.
They're loving it, man.
I bet the OBS guys wish they started charging on that as well, man.
What's that? Say again?
I bet the OBS guys wish they started charging for their.
Yeah, OBS and Zoom are like fucking stoked. They're like, yeah, we're good.
Totally. So I wanna talk about LL Cool J. Obviously, it's I'm sure it's been a pretty big part of your life and your career over the last kind of 10 years. Was it 2011 you started?
Yeah, about 10 years, something like that. Yeah, give or take.
And did that connect come about like organically, or did you just kind of like one day get a call and it was LL? Or?
did I knock on his door, come in with my boom box, and go box? Yeah. No, my radio. It came about. I took a meeting with him, and we were in talks to do this TV show where he was going to be the host and I was going to be the DJ, and it was this thing that somebody was sort of working on, and he basically brought our two worlds together in the meeting. And in the process of meeting him, my manager at the time had proposed to have him be a guest or come out and do a guest spot on one of my sets for South by Southwest. And he agreed to it. And we rehearsed, I think, maybe a day or two before, and he was only going to do one song. We were just going to do Mama Said Knock You Out. I was going to play the track. He was going to come out and, oh shit, what? That, moment. But in the process of doing that, I was like, well, shit, what happens if like they won't let us go without an encore? Like, then what do we do? We're going to have another thing planned. So going into the rehearsals, I know as a DJ that Rock the Bells instrumental didn't exist, but I was like, if we don't do Rock the Bells, that'll be a sin, right? So we have to do Rock the Bells. So I looked around online, and all the clips I ever saw were him rapping over the vocal version of Rock the Bells of the clips that I'd saw. And I just was like, I assume he doesn't have an instrumental of this. And so I was like, well, that sucks, because like I can't ask him like, hey, do we have an instrumental? Like, can we do this? I was like, but wait, what is Rock the Bells? Rock the Bells is a drum machine. It's these couple samples. I'm like, I have all that. I have an 808. I'm like, so I basically plugged in the 808, dusted it off, grabbed my treble funk samples or whatever, you know what I mean? Grabbed all the samples and like recreated it, the instrumental to Rock the Bells, verbatim, pumped up the bass, made it beefy sounding, compressed it, showed up at the rehearsal. We did Mama Said Knock You Out like 3 or 4 times. And then I was like, hey man, we got, another half hour. Like, let's do Rock the Bells. He's like, all right, I'm with it. And so I played it and didn't tell him. And the minute he went to go rap, you've been waiting and debating for oh so long. And he didn't hear his vocals. I think it caught him off guard because he was like, what? And he stopped. He's like, where'd you get this? I'm like, I made this. And we just kept moving. And he's like, let's do it again. So we did it like 2 or 3 times. And he's broke out into a sweat. I broke out into a sweat. We were just hyped. And it was like, he's like, you made this? I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm kind of a purist. I can't really, I can't have you rapping over your own lyrics, man. It just doesn't feel right. Like, you're LL Cool J. This is Rock the Bells. This is like a, if I can make this and remake it and make it, enhance it and make it dope, like for us to perform, like, let's do that. And he's like, I like the way you think, man. He's like, what else you got in that computer? And we just started like digging and around. And like, that's what kind of set off our connection, is that I think we instantly connected over music and our attention to detail within that music. And I obviously have been, being a fan and growing up listening to him, I knew his catalog. So I knew sort of when to bob and weave through the tracks and like when to do drops, when like it just felt worked. Natural to me to know how to DJ for him. So, so that, we did the show and the response was so amazing. And we added a couple more tricks and little bits and pieces to the set, but we got off stage, we went backstage and we were both like, yo, we got to do that again. Like, we got to do that again somewhere soon, because that was incredible. Because it's real. Like, the thing is, when he and I perform, it's very proper ingredient. DJ, MC, no hype man, no filler, no bullshit, straight up. There's moments where we call audibles. Yo, man, bring that back. Let's do this or whatever. And it's like, and so I don't, being my own front man for my own brand and my own thing is great. But like, when I get to actually sit back and do strictly the DJ portion of the MC DJ combo and he is in the front, like, who the fuck better to have in front of you than DJ, right? Like, so to me, it was, because of our love and our connection of this music and this culture, it just made sense. And when we really started digging into it, started really developing sets, we started to see that like, yo, we're kind of unstoppable. This is incredible. And there's so much that we can do with this. And it's really deeply rooted in the blueprint of what hip hop is. And we've been able to push some boundaries and take some steps and really fuck people up a little bit. Because here's the other thing is, there aren't that many people who are still doing the original blueprint, right? So when some people see that, they're seeing it for the first time. Some people are like, what? I didn't realize. Some people, they still think he's an actor. The actor guy raps. Like, they don't know that there's this whole other side of him that has already been, and so it's just kind of fun to like to shock the system again with those kinds of shows, and then that parlayed into Rock the Bells Radio, which is a channel on Sirius XM. For those of you in the UK, who may or may not get it, I don't know, but it's a channel. It's basically a channel on a satellite radio, and it used to be like a classic throwback channel that was called Backspin, and they offered it up to him to rename it and rebrand it as LL Cool J's Rock the Bells Radio, and then we sat down and sort of were working on getting that together. But he really was the catalyst for the song choices. He's really curated the channel, and I just helped add fuel to that fire, and making all the bumpers and all the things be stuff that I would want to hear, and stuff he would want to hear, and stuff you guys would want to hear if you're a real true hip hop head, as opposed to hearing It Takes Two or whatever. Like, not to knock those tunes, but like in certain people's minds, that's the only hip hop that they recognize as like Can't Touch This, MC Hammer, or Skilo, I Wish I Was a Little Bit Taller. It's like they wouldn't know a Wu-Tang album cut ever. And so the idea was to sort of fuse a little bit more of that into the dialogue, as opposed to just playing just the hits. So there's been this great balance of like still keeping it hit friendly, but keeping it really, really deep for the head. So it's become sort of our channel, and so to be a part of that journey too has been great. But like LL in general, working with him has been amazing, but it's been great to become, a friend and a collaborator just outside of just being on stage. It's been really, really fun because he's an amazing man. He's a brilliant dude, and his work ethic is incredible. Like, I picked up so much game just by being in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so shout out to LL all day, because that dude is the GOAT without a doubt, hands down. Sure, like man. Icon.
Have you guys had a chance to sort of like chat? Is there anything like coming up in the future that you guys have been?
I mean, there's always things, but it depends on both of our schedules. Depends on he's also very impulsive. Sometimes he'll be like, "Yo, we're doing this tomorrow." I'm like, "Okay, I guess we're doing this tomorrow." It's like you're walking with a panther. You don't know what the fuck's gonna happen.
Yeah, totally.
So there's a level of, but the thing is, like, I'm also cool with that, because the b-boy in me is always ready for shit to pop off. Like, so and so just walked in the door. Throw on his instrumental, let's go. Like, that kind of mentality of being at the ready for any scenario has, I think, allowed me to be able to bob and weave with him. And so, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I imagine there's some stuff coming up. There's we've always got some things, cooking, and there's projects that we were like, hey, well, we should do this. Then we've kind of shelved it, and maybe we'll come back to it. It's just constantly, you got to pay attention. You got to sort of be keyed in, because at any moment things could go down,
It's funny you're talking about being kind of ready for anything. I was watching the Serato Unscripted you did, and I loved that story you told about, was it Coachella and Beck?
Oh yeah, doing the Beck thing, that was incredible. Like, I love that shit though. To me, like, anything that pushes the boundaries, man. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just really quickly paint the picture. I had my second time, I think I was playing Coachella. I had a whole bunch of momentum behind Uneasy Listening, and people were just, were like, my stage was packed. But the main dude at Golden Voice was like, hey man, I'm stressing because Beck wants to do an impromptu acoustic set, and I don't know where to put him in the lineup. I was like, just have him come on at the tail end of my set. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, we'll figure out a way to segue it. And so I was like, I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll figure it out. But ultimately, it came down to, I should play 2 turntables and a microphone and stop the song and be like, rather than play the song, how about I bring Beck out and we just do it live? Yeah. So he came out, and we were on a break beat, and then his guitarist, bass player, was playing like a riff, and then he was we just sort of did it impromptu, but like, nothing was scripted. And literally, as I was walking up the stairs to go to my turntables to perform, I met Beck, and I was like, hey man, so I'm thinking we do like 2 turntables and a microphone. I'll play it, I'll stop it, then maybe you come out, we'll do like 2 verses, maybe like verse, chorus, verse, double chorus out. And he's like, yeah, cool. I'm like, great. All right, man, I'll see you later. And I just jumped up and like, fuck, I don't know. Hopefully this works. You know what I mean? And it worked perfectly. It was like, but I think that's if you're a pro at what you do and you're on top of your game and you're prepared for anything, you know what I mean? And you put in the man hours and the time or whatever, like things like that pop up and you just inherently know how to bob and weave, right? So that was, to me, was one of those moments where, and then it ended up being like, that was one of the first, if not the first, moments in the Coachella history at that point where they were like, surprise thing. Oh, and so everyone was like, my performance and my name was attached to like Beck and the performance, the surprise on like all the media that came out and all the newspaper articles and shit. It was incredible because it boosted everything for me. But more importantly, it allowed me and Beck to become, you know, friends. And then I worked on a couple other projects with him and like, you know, did some studio work with him. And it was, and it just sort of opened up more doors. But I love the fact that had I been like, you know, well, good luck finding a spot for Beck.
Totally.
And like, it was like, no, like, fuse it into my world. Like I feel like taking any kind of opportunity or chance to enhance things or be risky, if done correctly, will give you a shit ton, you know, of rewards. And so it was definitely incredible to have that happen. You know, it was, yeah. And the cool thing is like people caught that shit on camera and like, you know, so it's somewhere, it's out there, but it was so fun. It was like the crowd's response to pull a fast one on them and be like, oh, let's just bring Beck out. Like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, that'd have been amazing.
So, you know.
So, what's coming up for Z-Trip? What's on the cards? Obviously, you got your live streams happening, but any other?
Yeah. I mean, I've been pretty heavy on the live streams. So that's Thursdays on Twitch, 6 p.m. PST every Thursday. You know, I've got some new music I've been working on. I put out a track with my homie LS Dream called Space Funk. We put that out, you know, maybe, I don't know, 4 weeks ago. And it's real dope. It's like, you know, sort of a slow funk banger, some talk box on it, you know.
Yeah, I copped that one, man. It's great.
And, you know, he and I talking about maybe doing some more stuff together. So there's that. But, you know, it's kind of funny because all these projects that I've been working on, I'm sort of getting to the point where it's like I want to release them now and put them out. And all this, there's this huge amount of momentum behind what I'm doing because I feel like the planets are just aligning in a weird way. You know, you have the perfect storm of people being home and wanting content, wanting to watch stuff, needing something, and you know, having the ability to share this music and share different styles, different sets with people has been fun. And I feel like also by doing things like I did stuff for Insomniac, so doing Nocturnal Wonderland and EDC and these virtual rave-a-thons and sort of bringing in these other people that wouldn't necessarily know or weren't exposed to what I was doing into the fold. It's also brought a whole new sort of perspective and it's just, so it's all these different things are sort of all happening where it's like, okay, this is time for me to put some things out. This is time for me to sort of, you know, like, no need to sit on anything. Just release and give and give and give. And you know, I think also there was a moment where I was kind of attached to, well, if I give, I need to receive. You know, if I put out a record, I need it to be, you know, received and purchased and digested in a certain way. And like, that was sort of a little bit of my old mentality of like the record release. You release the record, you promote the record, you know, you share it with people, you do the promos, you do the white labels only to certain people, and other people buy it, whatever. This whole sort of bubble that we lived in as far as releasing tracks. And to me, now all that shit is kind of over with. So it's just like, just put it out there. Just fucking put it out there, and hopefully you get some sense of return, whether it's, you know, people just being into what you're doing, following you, whatever. Like the reciprocal part of it, I just stopped really giving a fuck about it. And to me, I feel like that's the weight that's been lifted off my back is, you know, financially not the best move, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like, you know, hopefully down the line, these people come to a show or buy a hoodie or, you know, whatever it is. And maybe that's how it comes in. But to be concerned about getting paid right now, I think is the wrong focus. I think the main thing is about giving people content and music and just creating and releasing and showing that you're prolific, showing that you have the ability to at any point give people something so they go, oh, that person's special. I'm going to keep an eye out for that person. And that to me is sort of, that's the mantra that I've been, you know, on the last few months, is just create, you know, eventually. And it's funny because it goes back to my original thing. Like when I started doing this, I was just creating anyway. Like I didn't know that it was going to turn into a career. I didn't know that it was going to turn into a legacy. I didn't know any of that shit. I was just like, yo, just create, put it out. Hopefully more people show up to the club. You know what I mean? That was really it. Here, make more mixtapes, give them away. I would go and do a B-boy event, and, you know, let me go do B-boy summit, or let me go do Battle of the Year. Better bring 100 cassette tapes that I hand, you know, cut the fucking covers for and hand dubbed myself, so I could give them to people, so I could expose this. And that was it. And I didn't, you know, I never looked at any sort of reward of like, oh, I'm going to get rich off of this. It was just like, just expose, just share this stuff, and eventually things will come back, and they have. And I feel like right now we're all in this sort of headspace of, you know, it's reset, it's do it yourself, it's start over, it's refresh. So to me, go back to the original thing that worked, which is just give it away, you know, put it out there, put out the good energy, and hopefully good things will come back in return. And I'm a strong believer in that. And, you know, if you do that, I think people key into, oh, this person's just giving and just wants to share and wants to give good vibes.
It's like the law of attraction, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, man.
I remember,
so kind of like, for me, when you ask like what's next, it's like, I don't know, you know, just release, just purge music, purge good energy out to the world. And, you know, hopefully when things come back around, it'll balance itself out. But, you know, not to really be concerned about the return. It's just about the give, you know?
Yeah. Remember Jazzy Jeff talking on the same kind of topic, and his chat was like, you know, die empty, you know, get all your shit out there.
Yeah, it's funny. I turned Jeff onto the die empty
oh, really?
Concept. Yeah. So die empty is this guy Todd Henry, who's he wrote a book about it, and he has a series of books. And for those who don't know, die empty is about getting all of your creative and ideas and everything out of you before you die. So you don't die with your best ideas never accomplished, right? Mm-hmm. So this guy, Todd Henry, originally wrote a book called The Accidental Creative. And that was a book that helped me because I would find myself struggling on how the whole concept is how to put out brilliant work at a moment's notice. So if you get a call and they're like, we need you to remix this tune. Here's this amount of money, but it needs to be done in 3 hours. You're like, shit, what do I do? Like, so to crank out your best work, you have to dig into your reservoir of ideas and creative. And so this book really helped me refine tools that would help me. For example, one of the tools is unnecessary creating, right? So that's a thing that I've stopped doing, and I realized it was a huge mistake. I would only react to projects. Like projects would come across my thing. I'd be like, I got to work on that. And you'd react and you'd bang things out. I had to schedule time to do unnecessary creating where even amidst the deadline, I would go into the studio, turn on all the equipment, and just pull out music and play with it and mess with it and not have any agenda. So the unnecessary creating for a couple hours would yield these results of cool ideas that I'd be like, this is a great idea. It purged me from having the weight of whatever the project was on my shoulder. Yeah. It allowed me to get into a great creative space. And I would have these amazing ideas that I could technically put off to the side and come back to later. And so I would build up this reservoir of ideas, right? So that was unnecessary creating, which is one of the tools in Todd Henry's book, Accidental Creative. So I tweeted one day, Accidental Creative, I was like, yo, this book is amazing. And I think I screenshotted a passage that I highlighted. It was like some really crucial thing for any person who's a creative person. And somebody who knew him and knew me was like, hey, Todd, Z-Trip's reading your book, and tagged us. And I hit him on a DM, and I was like, dude, your book's amazing. He's like, thanks. And I was like, hey, I'd love to meet you sometime. And we set up a time to meet. And I basically met him when I was coming through town with LL for an LL show. He came backstage. We met. I was like, dude, your book changed my life, my whole perspective. He's like, here's my new book, called Die Empty. And I was like, what's this about? And he's like, oh, it's about, getting all your work off. I was like, great. So he gave me that book. And as we were talking, he's like, tell me about how sort of things started for you. And I just sort of gave him an idea of like my background. He's like, can I use that for my new book? I was like, yeah, sure. So his new book was called Louder Than Words, which is about finding your own voice within the creative community. And so he used the whole passage that I did in that book in his, based off the conversation. So for me, I was trying my hardest to sort of share that. So I basically had Todd Henry, asked him to come and speak at one of the playlist retreats. And he basically did his whole presentation to all the people, gave everybody books, and like the Die Empty mantra was a thing that everybody sort of took away. So it was like the fact I love when Jeff says that, because it's like, it's this message that has reverberated, and I've been able to sort of bounce past it to so, and it's funny because I don't even care about taking credit or whatever. It's the fact that people are tuned in, or that people might have bought Todd Henry's book or went down that rabbit hole. Todd it's funny. He's such a amazing, prolific writer, and all of his books, he has another one called Herding Tigers, where it's about if you're in a position of power, how do you herd all your creatives together and give them, the ability and tools to be able to create without the, feeling the stress of the environment. It's like, it's just super prolific dude, but it's awesome that you guys picked up on the Diamond concept.
Totally.
It's such a
I need to get these books, man.
He's great. He's great. I didn't even mean to turn this into a commercial, man. But like, he's the shit. And it's definitely helped me as a creative person find a sense of balance in needing to bang shit out and how to do it correctly, and how to not be exhausted and feel like, you're at the drawing board going, I only have 3 hours to create this thing. And the stress that can put on you as a creative. So yeah,
amazing, man.
Yeah, sorry, but big up Todd Henry. Big up Todd Henry.
Thanks for the royalty deal.
Yeah. No, he's the best, man. I always try and share his stuff because he's amazing. One of the stories, the story that I told him in the book that I'll just share with you really quick because it's a great concept. But as I was saying it, I didn't even realize that I was just speaking. But he was like, "Can I use that story?" He basically asked me how I got started, and I told him like, well, I got sort of the whole thing for me is I got down with all these DJs. We were all sort of coming up around the same time, like, the Cut Chemists or the Shadows or whatever. Like we're all sort of, getting exposed at the same time to everybody. And he's like, how did you find your voice? And I was like, well, once the thing started growing and all these branches started happening, you had like, so-and-so would go down that branch, so-and-so would go down this branch. And I would find myself going down the same branches with some of these people, but then their branch would break to the left and mine would break to the right. He's like, well, what happened then? I was like, well, that's when it really started getting interesting because I then had no mentor or contemporary. I was on my own branch. He's like, well, what would happen when you got to the end of your branch? I was like, and I thought about it. I was like, well, that's kind of the interesting part is once you get to the end of your branch, you drop whatever seeds in the ground, and then you basically create a new tree based off of that. It's like your fruit drops and you create a new tree. I was just sort of riffing off the idea of like, that's just how each one teach one, right? Like this is how it is.
Yeah, man.
And he's like, can I use that story? I'm like, yeah. And so it's funny. So he did an audio book of that, and I end up taking some of the audiobooks sometimes and I scratch that into my sets because it's just really, you have this narrator guy who's like, and then the branch and the thing. It's like, it's just kind of fun to manipulate, but he's great, man. In fact, one more thing on my SoundCloud page, there's a thing that I did with one of his podcasts where I took his spoken word and I threw it under a beat and just chopped him up a little bit. And it's called Adaptive Rhythms. And it's the concept of, and it sort of speaks to what I was talking about earlier without really knowing it, but like you get these rhythms that you're going within your system that work for you. Oh, I get up at this time, I do this, I plug this thing in, whatever. And so that's your rhythm and it works and everything's working. But once the environment changes, you still keep the same rhythms and you actually have to adapt the rhythms to the new environment. And so it's about how you shift your rhythms to adapt to each environment. And so I took that whole set and I sort of chopped it up over a beat, and that's on SoundCloud. So you can kind of hear that,
amazing.
Something cool.
I'm going to buy that book, man. I'm going to buy that book for sure.
It's dope. His books are great. I mean, like they're great reads, and they're just for anyone who's a creative person, they're really good tools. And I found in the DJ community that anybody I've exposed to it has walked away with a little bit more wisdom on how to proceed or how to tackle creative issues or, you know, organizing things within the, you know, our world, because our world, there is really no handbook, you know what I mean? It's very much about like sort of, oh, that works for that person, I may have to try that. Or like we'll sit around the campfire and talk about, oh, you stream at this bit rate for OBS? Oh, I do. It's like that kind of shit. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely. So we always try and finish on this question with folk. Have you got any advice for young Z-Trip, like 18-year-old Z-Trip? If you could give him one bit of advice.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, I think there was a level of you know, old wise Z-Trip. I think speaking to young cocky Z-Trip would be like, you know, just let things happen as they need to happen. Because I think there was a bit of a feel of I needed to be in control of the narrative a little bit. I was, you know, because I didn't want people to get the wrong idea or the wrong impression on things. Like, you know, for instance, like when the term mashup came up, I was so, no, it's not called mashups, it's blending. We're just mixing acapellas. And I had this chip on my shoulder, and I was like rallying against the way people were receiving this thing. And like, people were also crediting me as being the inventor of it. I'm like, no, I didn't invent it. That's a concept that's been going on for years. And like, I tried my hardest to like control the narrative and control things. And I would lose a lot of sleep over that because I was like, I don't want this to be perceived wrong. I don't want this to be misunderstood. And I feel like I was trying to fight what was happening. And ultimately, I needed to sort of play the back role and just let the chips fall where they may and continually try to just do the right thing, you know, walk the righteous path as best as I could, because eventually the people who need to hear it will hear it. The people who want to gravitate towards what you do will gravitate towards what you do, right? So, you know, banging your chest or like hammering somebody with, you know, the flyer or the whatever, like, here's my new song, like just jamming it down people's throats, or here's my concept. It's like people react way more to sincerity and just having that be a part of who you are versus here's the agenda. And I think as a young kid, I didn't realize that because I was, you know, I grew up watching all these other artists or labels, like trying to like, here's how you promote your product. Here's how you hammer people with your concept. And I didn't realize like the marketing of things sometimes will completely be counterproductive because, you know, if I see a billboard of something driving down the side of a bus, I'm going to look at that and go like, whatever. But if you guys were to hand me the same product and be like, you should check this out, I will be way more open to receiving that. So the concept of like hammering people with your concept, or like, you know, it's the equivalent of like the religious person knocking on your door and being like, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus? You're like, no, wait a second. Versus, you know, if you just want people to sort of see that, just walk the righteous path as best as you can, and hopefully someone will be like, hey man, can I ask you a question, you know, about these things? And you can sort of, you know, you can speak on it. But the young me was very much about like trying to control how people see things, or how people, you know, it mattered to me so much that the right message got out. And while there's still a part of me that still feels that way, I'm still very passionate about making sure people are aware of things, and, you know, that people get the right shout outs that need them, and trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. You will also bury yourself in that mentality and not allow like the universe to just provide. And it's funny because certain things that I used to really give a shit about, years later I could give a fuck about, you know what I mean? They don't matter anymore. And the bigger thing is about sharing, spreading love, spreading joy, connecting the dots, you know, and just being sort of genuine with it. And it took me a long time to detach myself from the outcomes of things, you know what I mean?
It's funny you say that, because we had Charlie Tuna on the first episode we did of this, who I know you know, and he said pretty much exactly the same as that. He was just like, chill the fuck out a little bit, Charlie.
Totally, man.
Let me ask you guys the same question. Just, as you know, obviously we just have met. I've been talking about me the whole time, man. Like, I'm sure your listeners or whatever would want to hear this as well. I know we only have like 8 minutes to do this, but like, I'd love to get your perspective. It's a heavy question.
I would say just like don't worry so much about things that you don't have control over. Do your passion. If your passion is to, I don't know, whatever the fuck it is that you want to do, like if you're doing that and you're happy doing it, then like, that positive energy that you put out there to people, that's gonna come back to you.
Yeah.
That's what I think, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I've been like trying to consciously like work on for myself is not comparing myself to others. And in this day and age where it's so easy to, open your phone and then like you're guaranteed to see someone that's doing something cooler than you are or doing something better than you are, especially in the DJ community, because there's always someone higher up the ladder, there's always like someone further down their path. So it's so like, yeah, trying to just really focus on not comparing and just keep kind of just on what you're doing.
You know what? It's funny. I used to follow a whole bunch of different DJs that, at the time, I feel like they were making noise. And, there was also a time where I was with a management team who was like, we gotta supersede them. We gotta surpass them. We gotta, be better than them. So I was paying attention to what they were doing to try and like, and I was like, wait a second. And I realized the whole mentality of, I use the Mad Max analogy, which is something that I really stand behind, which sort of speaks to your thing, is don't compare, don't compete. Mad Max, like if you think about the visual of like, if you pan out on the playa and you see a car that's one car, and then you pan out and you see, 8 cars chasing that one car. It's like the Mad Max. They're all chasing Mad Max and he's trying to get away from everybody. If you were to look at that herd mentality of like the person in the lead is the person that everyone's chasing. But all of a sudden, if one of those cars, of those 8 cars, just turned around and went the complete opposite direction, your eyeballs couldn't help but go, where the fuck is that person going? It's not in the order. It's not in the order of what's going. To me, I realized that I've gained more when I've went down my own path, because I stopped messing with the herd mentality and just was on my own journey. And I found that more people would follow what I was doing based on the sheer curiosity of why I was going that way. And so it was that situation where it's kind of the same deal. I stopped following all these different people because I was like, I don't even care what they do. Like, more props to them for doing what they do. Like, I wish them well on their journey, but if I'm trying to sort of do the same things they're doing, then it's false. Like, I need to do my own thing. And that's something that the Mad Max mentality that I like, the bigger picture of just follow your own path. And it's funny because that was sort of what the whole mashup thing happened, is like, I'm going to just go down this road. And I thought people were going to hate it, but it ended up that everyone dug it and everyone started following me. Then I became Mad Max. I was like, whoa, shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, there was that mentality of like, once I got far enough away from everybody, I just kind of parked the car and let people just pass me by so I could go the other direction, start over again. You know what I mean?
It's like Top Gun, man. Hit the brakes and it'll fly right by.
Yeah. Like, so I think there's a level of like, constantly be pushing, constantly be, re-evaluating and recalibrating, but like, don't worry about people following you. And the minute you stop, it's like looking for love, right? When you're like, man, I need to be in love. I want a girlfriend or whatever. It's like the moment you stop, you're like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. That's when she walks into the laundromat. And you're like, hey, like, if you're not looking for this shit, it comes. Like, if you preoccupy yourself with the fame or the fortune or the whatever, like, your motives and your drive are completely skewed. So for me,
it's all off.
I think it's just about banging out music, doing good work, and putting it out there, and eventually, paths cross and people connect. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's like how we met. I just had a track of yours that I was like, this track is the shit. And I played it, and you guys were like, that's our track. I was like, oh shit. You know what I mean? So just in doing what you genuinely care about, opportunities and connections arise. And I feel like, the universe, I'm a big subscriber to the universe provides and karmic energy. And, if you're on your own path and keep your third eye open, signs will show themselves and they'll open up your path. It's kind of like the wizard who is creating a step as he walks up in the clouds. You know what I mean? There's creating steps as you go. And like, having faith in that, I think is crucial, and it doesn't always
man.
yield rewards immediately, but like if you do it long enough, eventually, you know, you realize like I'm on a greater path. I'm on something that's bigger than myself, right?
Yeah, man.
For sure, man. I think that's a pretty perfect place to end it on that note, right?
Yeah, sure, man.
That's it. I could literally chat to you for ages.
I know.
Like, this has been
Thanks, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure, man.
I appreciate you guys asking me to be a part of this.
Oh no, thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys, man. And thank you, by the way, for sending me all your joints, man. Like there's a couple I haven't played yet, and there's some cool things that I was messing with, man. It's like you guys hit me with all this great shit. I'm like, I got to figure out where to put this stuff. So
yeah, man. I wasn't sure, like, because I know you play so much different shit. So I was like, what do I send him? I was like, fuck it, I'll send him everything.
No,
Just send
it's
it all.
great.
Send it all.
There's a couple things that are really dope, man. So it's like I got a couple already in crates, sort of ready for when I go down that road. It's like I got a couple aces in the hole, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
nice, man. We'll keep sending you stuff.
Please,
yeah, hopefully we'll get to hook up with you in the future down the line.
Yeah, man. I need to get out to Glasgow. I think the last time I played there was Sub Club, which is like forever ago. So like
that's in the background of Marty's shot there.
That's there. Look,
Ace Girls at Sub Club.
Oh shit! Oh damn, Joe, man, that's amazing. I love it.
That was our first birthday party. We did this, like, started 9 years ago in this journey, and our first birthday was booking Ace Girls.
That's badass. Yeah, I gotta get back out there, man. It's been a minute, so hopefully soon.
Amazing, man. We're about to get cut off, I think, so we better.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you too,
man. Take it easy. Peace.
All the best, man. Peace.
All right.